Morning, everybody. As Nico said, my name is Trey Sellers. I'm head of client solutions at Unchained. Yes, I still have my laser eyes. Shout out to all the laser-eyed plebs out there. I don't know what you guys are doing removing those things. I'm committing. My lasers are not coming off until our job is done. Unchained helps people secure Bitcoin wealth for generations and provides tools to maximize its value through financial services that are built with Bitcoiners in mind. The underlying thesis is pretty simple. Bitcoin's absolute scarcity makes people want to HODL it. But HODLing ain't always easy. After all, Bitcoin is well known for its price volatility. Everyone in this room who owns Bitcoin, assume that's most of you, has experienced this firsthand. It goes something like this, or this, or this. That's what it looks like to the outside world as well. Here's what a couple of our octogenarian overlords have to say about it. It's too volatile to be used as a medium of exchange. Thank you, Charlie. And it's extremely volatile, and I worry about the returns and the losses that investors can experience. We really appreciate your concern, Secretary Yellen. Yet, both in spite of and because of this volatility, Bitcoin continues to be HODLed. After a while, you kind of start to enjoy it. I certainly know I do. The wider public, however, is completely unaware of the extent that this HODLing behavior is happening. While it's intuitively true that Bitcoin's fixed supply encourages HODLing, this trend can be quantified using data stored in the blockchain and in Bitcoin's price history. Unchained has an amazing team of data professionals who have worked to bring this data to life, and the result is HODL waves and the HODL Cave. So I'm here to stand on the shoulders of giants and give you kind of a guided tour through both of these plots. Starting with HODL waves. The term HODL waves was first coined by Unchained co-founder Drew Bonsall. You heard him earlier this morning. He was building on the work of John Ratcliffe, who created this particular plot. What I'd like to do is just help you understand how this is created, what data it's showing, how it evolves, and then we can kind of dig into some interesting observations that we can draw. The entire Bitcoin supply is made up of chunks of Bitcoin that are time-stamped every time they move. Drew helped give a pretty good representation of that earlier this morning. Thank you for that. Because of this, each chunk of Bitcoin has an age that increases until the next time that it is spent. So what the plot is showing is an age distribution across the Bitcoin supply through time. Each color band represents a specific age range of the Bitcoin supply, with the younger coins near the bottom and the older coins near the top. So we can explain this a little bit further by zooming in on more recent data. So this is taken from August 14th, a couple of weeks ago. The purple band at the top is capturing Bitcoin that has not moved in at least 10 years. And that represents about 15% of the total Bitcoin supply. In dark red at the very bottom, we can see that about 0.8% of the total Bitcoin supply has moved as recently as the last 24 hours. In yellow there at the middle, about 12% of the supply moved within 1 to 2 years. And we can also group some of these bands together. You can see the top 4 bands there account for about 40% of the total supply that has not moved in at least 3 years. We can also compare this recent data with a historical time period. So we can check out the age distribution of the supply and how it's changed since the 2021 price peak, for example. You can see that the share of older Bitcoin as a percentage of the total supply has significantly increased since then. Before we get further into the mechanics of how the plot is created and how it evolves over time, I think we need to step back and understand what I meant by chunks of Bitcoin. So chunks of Bitcoin is my not-so-technical term for UTXOs. An unspent transaction output, or UTXO, is any specific chunk of Bitcoin that's available to be spent. You can kind of think about this as the cash bills that are of varying denominations within your MeatSpace wallet. The balance of a wallet is made up of these chunks of Bitcoin. You can see an example here of two wallets. They each have 0.9 Bitcoin, but they're composed of different sets of Bitcoin UTXOs or chunks of Bitcoin there. And this is not a perfect technical representation, of course, but basically these chunks of Bitcoin can be combined or split when they are moved to a new wallet. This is the moment that the HODL waves distribution chart is capturing. The age distribution of the Bitcoin supply evolves over time as different chunks of Bitcoin are used in transactions. Spinning a chunk of Bitcoin moves it to the youngest age band, and then over time, it ages into older bands. So when a 5-year-old chunk of Bitcoin is spent, it immediately moves into the 24-hour age band. After 24 hours, it moves from that dark red to the light red, and it stays there for about a week. So after a week, it will then age to the next band, and on and on and on, until it is spent again, and the aging process resets. So now that we know how to read the chart, we can start to identify some patterns. The cyclical nature of Bitcoin can be seen in the evolution of this data. Widespread accumulation and hodling behavior results in coins maturing from the younger to the older bands, which are the warm areas near the bottom to the cooler areas near the top. This results in the proportion of the younger coins dropping related to the proportion of the older coins, right? And you can kind of see how that happens over time. Bear markets are typified by long periods of hodling behavior until the price starts moving higher and a new bull market begins. This causes older coins to be spent back into the economy, which can be seen in the proportion of warmer color bands increasing. And taken together, this repeating pattern has the appearance of a wave. You have a buildup of potential energy from hodling that leads to an upswell in activity that crashes on the beachhead of a new bear market. And you can kind of see the wave pattern there. When the HODL waves analysis was first published in April 2018, there were 3 large HODL periods that were really apparent on the chart. Here's the Genesis HODL, where early miners and Bitcoin pioneers like Satoshi, Hal Finney, and others, they stack sats by default. At the time, those sats really didn't have a value. There was very few people to send them to, and there was really nowhere to sell them, so they were HODLed. Then came the HODL of 2011, where after acquiring a price and rallying from about $1 to $33, those early pioneers started selling to a new batch of adopters who HODLed for a full 2-year period before enjoying the next rally to $198 in early 2013, and then ultimately to about $1,000 later that year. The new adopters in that bull market went on to be baptized by fire in the Great HODL of 2014. The trough of this HODL wave lasted 3 years until the Bitcoin price crossed $1,000 again before peaking just shy of $20,000 in late 2017. During 2017, 20% of Bitcoin in existence was transacted with for the first time in years. Why? We see 3 separate and pretty related reasons. The first is capturing gains. So as the price rose, new investors piled in, and that increase in demand was partially offset or met with selling from long-term hodlers. Number 2 is initial coin offerings. So during this ICO craze back in that time period, the primary way to get exposure to those shitcoins was by selling your Bitcoin. So people sold Bitcoin to buy those ICO shitcoins. And the third is the Bcash fork. So you can see a pretty pronounced increase in short-term activity around the time that Bitcoin Cash forked away from Bitcoin. You can see it right there in the chart. So we now have another full cycle under our belts since the HODL waves analysis was originally published, and the same pattern was repeated. We saw another HODL trough in 2018 and 2019. The wave crested in 2021 as a flurry of activity shifted the supply age distribution toward that new side. And where are we now? We are in the middle of the latest HODL trough. You gearing up for the next wave of activity to play out. Another pattern to note here is the general trend toward a larger and larger portion of the Bitcoin supply being HODLed for the long term. So as we speak, the share of Bitcoin supply that has not moved in at least 1 year is at an all-time high of 70%. I don't know about you, but that makes me extremely bullish as we're heading into this next halving event. Before moving on to the HODL Cave, I'd like to point out one additional observation on this plot. Take a look at this light green band that represents 2 to 3 year hodlers. You can see this band has widened significantly in the last year, which indicates that a large amount of Bitcoin that was purchased in 2020 and 2021 is in long-term hodler hands. And we saw a similar widening of this band in early 2020. There it is. Showing that a lot of new long-term hodlers were born in that run-up of 2017 and the early part of the bear market in 2018. So the narrative is clear. Over time, more and more people realize the value of hodling Bitcoin. But all of this hodling does not come without its trials and tribulations. To get a better understanding of what Bitcoin hodlers endure, we can turn to the HODL Cave. For those of you not aware, Unchained first came to market with our Bitcoin-backed loans product, which we still offer today, despite most of our competitors going bankrupt. The HODL Cave was a key input into our strategy for Bitcoin-backed loans, and we recently published it, made it available. The HODL Cave analyzes the spread of historical returns for investors who held Bitcoin for a given duration. So I'll orient you to the chart here. On the x-axis, across the bottom, is the length of HODL. Importantly, this is not linear time. It is the duration of a HODL from any given starting point in Bitcoin's price history. You can see it starts at 1 day on the left there and goes through 10 years on the right. The y-axis measures the spread of returns for a given HODL period. For example, historically speaking, for all 5-year HODL periods, the spread of returns goes from being slightly down. For instance, you bought at the top of 2017 and then sold 5 years later at the bottom of this bear market in 2022. Or it could be up as much as 1200x. And as you can see, the plot resembles a cave. Long-term hodlers are tasked with traversing this cave safely as time passes and volatility inevitably comes. They should be aware of the stalagmites and stalactites formed by local price variations and use the mean and median lines as ropes to guide them on their journey. So now that we're oriented to the cave, we can go through another few interesting observations from the plot. The correlation between hodling Bitcoin for the long term and having outsized returns is becoming more and more understood by the wider market. And we can see this in the data, of course. All hodling periods skewed positive. And of course, speculating on number go up technology is a key part of what initially attracts many investors here. But we shouldn't kid ourselves. The spread of these historical returns can be extremely wide. The Bitcoin price is volatile. Yeah, we're all surprised by that. That said, the first 3 years have had almost all of the potential downside risk. The average return from hodling Bitcoin for 2 years is about 8x, and it grows to 100x between years 6 and 7. Keep in mind, though, that 8x average return for a 2-year HODL period, it also comes with a chance, albeit like 5% or so, that you could have lost 50% of your initial investment. In 90% of cases, hodling Bitcoin for about 2.5 years yielded a positive return. Hodling for an additional 6 months increases the chances of a positive return to 99%. And here we can see that no one who has held Bitcoin for more than 5 years has ever experienced a loss, and almost no one who has held for more than 3 years has ever experienced a loss. And with regard to historical spreads of returns kind of across the chart, we can consider a few key timeframes. This is what it looks like for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and a full 4-year cycle. So again, while historically hodling Bitcoin for just a few years has provided excellent returns on average, there's also a non-trivial chance that you have significant downside risk in those early years. And the class of 2021 certainly knows exactly what that feels like. At the 5-year mark, the range of returns is the widest on the chart, but there's almost no negative return. And a final observation to note here is that there are clear signs of cyclicality in the HODL Cave data as well. You can see the Bitcoin price experiences a period of low volatility followed by high volatility, about every 4 years, which is right in line with the halving cycle. I'm sure that's all very surprising to you all. All right, so we can bring it all together. To me, HODL waves and the HODL Cave can help to visualize the process of pricing a perfectly scarce asset as it monetizes. They give us insight into the behavior of hodlers over time and the volatility they experience while they're hodling. The cave exists because the waves exist, and vice versa. Hodlers in the trough of a wave create that supply shortage that causes the price to rise. The rising price brings activity from old hodlers selling to new entrants, some of which become hodlers for the next wave. And this cyclical process helps to generate Bitcoin's infamous price volatility, which then serves to attract new investors, and the cycle keeps going. Hodling Bitcoin is a journey. In the depths of a bear market, it can feel like a dark cave. If you find yourself in that short-term period of negative returns, it's helpful to see the light at the end of the tunnel as the reversion to the mean, which very consistently rises over time, as you can see in that data. On the other hand, you need to be aware of the reversion to the mean if you've experienced a really high rate of return in a short period of time. And finally, make sure that you are actually prepared to deal with that volatility and navigate this journey. I'd like to just pose a few questions for you to consider. Do you have permissionless access to your Bitcoin, or are you exposed to counterparty risk that might otherwise cause you to lose it, to somebody else's risk? Is your security setup fault tolerant by design, or is your Bitcoin one mistake away from being lost? How will your non-technical heirs inherit your Bitcoin if something happens to you? And finally, how might you and your family benefit from having Bitcoin experts available to guide you through your journey through the cave? It's so important to choose a HODL-mobile that is designed to withstand both the tremendous growth and volatility you will experience as the fiat system spins out. You'll need financial services that are built to help you HODL. And you'll need a custody model that is resistant to mistakes and theft and put your family in a position to safely inherit that Bitcoin. Putting that in place is going to allow you to sleep just as well as Steve Martin in the front seat of this car here. After all, the Bitcoin that you're hodling is precious cargo, and the journey can be treacherous. We are here to help. Thank you.